I mean, you've probably heard about solar returns, but solar arcs. And it's a system, a mathematical system that's used a lot in the States, and it's been built up through different programs, and they put it in. But it takes the sun's position, moves it, sees where it moved by progressions, and then moves every planet that amount around the chart, moves the whole chart, everything that amount, and then counts the aspects and interprets that way. And I don't suggest you use it because it really is a distraction from seeing and listening to the real progressions going on. And when you do that, you miss a lot of information. So we'll start to see this with Mercury. You miss if something goes retrograde. And these are huge things in a person's life when a planet changes direction in your progressions. So we're going to start. We're just going to highlight. We're over in the Mercury column. So you haven't there's no sun or moon marks. It's just the Mercury. I mean, at this level, you really get to know the ephemeris and understand the ephemeris, so you can work in ephemeris and really get information you want. It's just so incredible, but it's different today. So we're going to come at this another way with computers and see how to get the same information. But I find it's still nice to have this drawing to refer back to. Okay, so there's the Mercury. I highlighted it. Now we're going to change, if it changes signs, we're going to mark on it. And I'm going to just take a blue line and mark in the changing sign. So here, Mercury starts in Scorpio, went into Sag. There it is, I marked it down there. And then when retrograde goes back into Scorpio, I mark that in. Then it goes back into Sag. And in 2024, it'll go ahead into Capricorn, and then if I live long enough in 2042, 43, it goes into Aquarius. So I've marked in when it changes signs. But as we did this, we've run across something else that happens to Mercury. It can go retrograde, and that really changes things. But we'll take care of this in the next step. But that we still mark in when it changes each sign, whether it's going forward or backwards. But we have to notice when it's going retrograde and when it goes direct. I just used a different color. I used the teal. And we'll draw from start. You'll see how I draw it in. So okay, here we go. When you're going along, I didn't put the first one in. No, the first little one in. It happens in my Mercury went into Sag, goes up to 7 degrees and 11 minutes of Sag, 7:19, and then goes retrograde and starts going 7:17, 7, just starts going backwards. So it really slows down. It's in that 6th to 7th degree for 5 or 10 years, really in that position. And then fortunately I didn't have any bad aspects to it, or I would have maintained that difficult aspect for that whole amount of time. But then I marked the line where it starts retrograde, and I put a line down the side of the Mercury column, and I mark it when it went direct again. And it starts going from 21:9 to 21:14. It's moving forward again. So there's the stationary direct. It's going direct. It's not being retrograde. Then it moves back over into Sag. And then there's one other line I mark in here. Mercury went retrograde at 7 degrees 11 minutes. So it goes back, goes direct. And then I mark in when it comes back to that 7 degrees 11 minutes, because there's an important point that happens here. So there's I went my mind went forward. I was learning going forward until I was about, that's 24. At 24, I started my Mercury retrograde. I had to rethink everything I learned in my life. I'm rethinking, and I'm living my life at the same time as my mind's going back, comparing to older things. Then it went direct. I started going forward again. I go back over the same degrees again. And it wasn't until it's this last degree, till about 2008, that Mercury finally reached its own position again. Or reached the degree, not its own position, it reached this degree that it went forward. And it starts going forward from where as far as my mind went forward before, it went back, came forward, back and forth over these. And finally it's going into new territory and going onward where it is now. And these retrograde periods, it just changes your whole way of thinking. They're totally remarkable when you notice them. So we're going to get into this in more detail when we get to it, but just little bits to pique the curiosity now. Yeah, so I just put a note in saying that I use the colors to make it easier to read and see different levels of phenomena. But really, you can use different color, whatever colors you wish. It's not a total system. Okay, so that's jamming. 1 second. Okay. Okay. I'm going to go back a bit here. And then once I put the retrograde in, somewhere along here, just back up a little bit. Yes, Mercury, it goes from my 3rd house into my 4th, back into my 4th, and goes in my 5th of my lifetime. So there I marked the houses in here. Here I don't know why, but at the time I put them in red and going across. So there's house 4 there, so it hits the IC 2001 and hits the 5th house. So this is my story of my Mercury, of my inner mental development, and the way my imagination, my thinking evolved through my lifetime and will evolve. It's not just static, but in my chart, it's how I'm growing through that and what I'm learning through what's happening in my natal chart. This is my take on it. It's just a slight shift, a little bit different. Okay, so I just want to go through these quickly because we've got a lot to do today. Yeah, I'm taking a bit more time than I should have. Okay, there's Mercury retrograde. Okay, so we got Venus. We have to set up the Venus progression. So same thing. Take a new set of ephemeruses, and we're going to mark in Venus. We've got the dates, so we just highlight the column for Venus. Okay, or just 1 over. So in progressions, your sun moves a degree, so you get 90 degrees. The moon moves 12 to 15 degrees a day, so you're going to get 3 cycles of the moon in your lifetime. Mercury moves, and you can move anywhere from just a few minutes when it's going stationary or direct, retrograde or direct, but it can move up to 2 degrees and a bit in a day, but you still will never go around your whole chart. It would make one orbit of the sun in 88 days heliocentrically. So there's a whole nother level I haven't really looked at. We could do heliocentric progressions. Let's just stay here for now, keep it simple. Everything that moves, everything that is, and everything that moves is moving in a certain time, and we're watching that symphony, and that's our symphony. So we put the Venus in, we have the dates and everything all set up. Then we got to put when the Venus changes signs. I'm just going faster because I pick things up. So we got to put, now my Venus changed, it goes to Sag, it went up, it went retrograde. You don't see the retrograde, but it changed from Sag into Scorpio. You see that? How does it go from Sag? It's going retrograde. Okay, so that's one thing. And then when does it go direct? It went, we're going to get that in a minute. Right now we're just changing the signs, so it doesn't change back into Sag till 2026. Okay, that's it. My life is that's Venus. They don't move as much around the chart as you get to the outer planets. So we've marked in when it changes houses. Then we're going to go, if it goes retrograde, we've got to mark in that retrograde, just like we did with Mercury. So in my case, my Mercury went forward, started at 0 of Sag, and moved up to, 2 degrees 10 minutes of Sag, and then went retrograde. Then it retrograded back, and it changed back. And then there's a certain point in 68 when it went into Scorpio, it went back into Scorpio. From Sag into Scorpio, that's a whole different inner theme. And it went back, and stayed retrograde until 1998, when I went to 17 degrees, went back to 17 degrees of Scorpio. Well, I was glad because it stopped there, because if it went back further, it would have stationaried right squaring my Pluto conjuncting my Mars. It would have sat there for 10 years. No, I would have been had that aspect really critical for most of my life. In this phase, it got close. It was enough of a presence, but then it went direct. I went forward, and I'd have to get to 2029 before it gets back to its own starting point. So Venus backed up, went into Scorpio, came back forward, went into Sag again, and came back to its own place. It comes back to its own place in 2029, then moves forward, but it'll never get out of Sag. It just sets its own distance. But it's a funny thing, because when a Venus planet goes back before its own position, it starts going back into things from another lifetime. Other things start being connected. Rather than what's outside, you're connecting. Other things are happening that are connected from other lifetimes that come up into you. Okay, we'll get it. Again, we're going to get into these things more. But it's kind of worth knowing. Then we got to mark in the house cusps. And with my Venus, with the house cusps, my Venus went forward, went back. It's conjunct the IC. So it backs up, goes, and hits, here's the, the red line's a house change. That's change. No, it's not a house change. What's that red line doing there? 1 second, we'll get to it in a minute. Oh, that's when it conjuncted itself. It came back to conjunct its own position. It got back to it, went forward, retrograde, came back to hit its own position in 67, then went back into Scorpio, then it conjuncted my IC, my motivation point. Then it went back, then it went direct. It went forward, and I put it, then it comes back to my IC again, and then goes back into Sag. I'm looking forward to that. That's coming up, that's in about 5 years. Then my Venus goes on beyond where it started from. So I've gone through, I grew up through alcoholic, abusive environment, and I went forward, I went back, I had to rethink it through, and I had to get married, and I had to rethink these two things again, go through, reevaluate things. So it's great it's all been in mostly my third house, so that was good for research. But that was, again, that's example. So once we finish with Venus, we get to Mars. Now Mars, it's still the same amount of time, still the same ephemeris. We're highlighting the Mars for 100 days, but it doesn't, and then we got to put in when it changes signs. Well, sometimes Mars might not even change sign in a lifetime. Mine changed signs in 1966. It went into Sag out of Scorpio, and in 2007 it went into Capricorn. And if I live to 100, it'll turn into Aquarius. Okay, so I'm leaving that up in the air for question marks. But in any case, we've marked up the Mars. Now Mars doesn't move that much. So my Mars, unfortunately, didn't go retrograde. That is just changed signs, and then we're going to add the houses to it. But if there's a retrograde period, it'll go retrograde. It could be retrograde all your life. It could be retrograde and direct at some time in your life and change things. So but a retrograde period of Mars is a lot longer than 90 days. So it's a bigger statement if it goes retrograde or direct, or it has been retrograde and going direct. So again, if it's there, we'd mark it in, but I don't have it marked in. I just have the houses put on. Yeah, I just have the houses marked in clearly too, so you have your navigation system around it. So really, these are just moving around the edges of your chart. We're just seeing a chart here, just seeing the ephemeris. We're marking in sections so you can see as it's going through those sections. Boy, when I finally got to doing this in my ephemeris after working so many years, calculating, hand calculating, drawing things up, this was such a relief to do. And that's Mars. And then we get to Jupiter. Now, but they don't move very much. A lot of people don't use the other planets. I do, because an aspect can get tighter or less tighter. Things still very predominant that affect long-term changes.